In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at some garden design ideas that I wish I had known sooner. Now, I love getting inspired by other people's gardens, and much of my own garden is inspired from, amazing gardens that I've seen online and such. So I thought it'd be a fun idea to share some of my sort of favorite design ideas that I'm using in the garden that I think you should try in your own garden, and hopefully it might inspire you, something to do over the autumn as things slow down a bit, or even a project to save for spring next year. But these are some of my absolute favorite ideas. By the way, I'm trying to hit 4,000 subscribers, so I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and you became a part of our community. Now, this is very much a cottage garden design idea, but I absolutely love having a vintage pair of chairs and a table somewhere in your garden like this. It's got to be this sort of metal. I really like it when they're painted, and the paint's a little bit rusty. It just looks so good. Now, I'll admit, these actually aren't vintage. These are actually, well, I say they're new. They're not new anymore. I got them from HomeSense, which is basically a place where they sell off the stuff that was like X display and stuff like that, that is now not the full price of what it originally was. It's a really great store for finding furniture that's not insanely expensive. I know this video is not sponsored by HomeSense. I just really like using them. But yeah, these came from there, but you can find similar ones in so many different like antique yards and like reclaimed places. So I definitely recommend getting a pair of chairs and a table like this. I think it's so neat. It's a really nice little place to sit, but it just looks good, I feel like, and the colors really match with a lot of the other colors in my garden, as you can see. So yeah, these have actually been with me for quite a few years now, and I just leave them out. They do go rusty, but that's kind of what I want. I kind of want that effect, so I'm not too bothered about that. Now, I've sort of styled them with this really cute little metal tray with the terracotta pots in the middle. As you can see, these are filled with little sort of alpine plants. I don't really know if they're the best for these types of pots, as they do dry out very quickly. As you can see, this one right on the edge is pretty dead, but I think it looks nice, and some of them are doing pretty well anyways. So planting aside, I like the idea of having a little metal basket like this and using those sort of ideas. I've also got a few vintage things that I got, like this little glass. It's almost like a terrarium in a way. You could put a candle in here. I think that's probably a good idea. And then I've got this little water sprayer as well, just some accessorizing. It's a bit messy at the moment actually, because I have an old citronella candle on here, and also this is where I keep my pegs thing, which is again a metal sort of vintage looking basket. So I really like doing that sort of thing. I think it adds to the cottage charm. Of course, it could look a bit neater than this right now, but still, I really like those ideas. I also absolutely love a sundial. You'll see it framed in a lot of my photos and videos. I love a sundial. This one is actually from the other side of the country. This is all the way deep into Cornwall, right at almost like the very end of Cornwall, to be honest with you. I found this on Facebook Marketplace, which is where I find a lot of my goodies, and I bought it and we took it home somehow. It's so heavy, you wouldn't believe. We had to, when we got it off the lady, we had to wheel it in this like thing, so it was really difficult, but I'm so glad I got it because it's absolutely amazing. I love it's got a bit of a story behind it as well, coming all the way from Cornwall. I think that's so incredibly cool, because if you don't know, we're in Suffolk. We are basically not as east as you can go, but like pretty east. So it's cool that it came from the other side of the country, literally. I love that it's had a big journey to get here. And I've framed it with a little sort of circle. You can't see it really that well right now, but little stone circle. I just think that helps frame it really nicely, and it stands out as a feature, Not everything needs to be plants. I think it's good to break it up a little bit. You can see I've done that over here as well, in this flower bed, which is a work in progress at the moment. And yeah, a bird bath, which I need to fill up by the looks of it, is definitely a good thing to have in your garden in terms of design ideas. Same with this big stone urn, which I've made a few videos on here. I really love it with the Origeron. That is one of my absolute favorite sort of design things that I guess I've done. I've got the ivy in the front, which doesn't actually go that crazy, I guess, because it's only in a small little planter, so it's been all right. It's not like the invasive type of ivy that goes everywhere. It's more of a calm one that you put in hanging baskets and such, so it's doing pretty good. And I just think the Origeron looks so good in there, the way it flows over, and obviously next year as it grows even bigger, it's going to look better. So that's definitely a design thing that I love. I also really like my sort of wall of pots that I've got here. Most of these were either found on discount, got from Facebook Marketplace. Yeah, I really like a lot of the things that we've got in here. I love having the dahlias in there. I've gotten some advice about terracotta pots and, you know, sort of people mentioning they aren't always the best because, you know, things can dry out in them very quickly. Also, they don't get the best protection as the glazed ones do, but I just love the style of them. So I think if you're putting things in here that aren't insanely precious to you and you don't mind, you know, if they die off, then, you know, it can be all right. It can be all right. Here is another little idea that I did. So I got this vintage metal basket from somewhere, I think it was eBay, and then so it was empty. It didn't come with any pots, but as you can see, these aren't actually pots. These are tins from the kitchen that I have reclaimed and I have reused. So these are just filled with little annuals. I fill them with hyacinth bulbs in the spring, and I just love it so much. I think this is one of my favorite things I've done in the garden. I love how rusty everything has gone. I just love that look so much. I think, you know, that really just comes together in a nice way. So this is definitely one of my favorite ideas that I've got in the garden at the moment. Yeah, just a really big fan of really big fan of rusty things, as you can probably tell. I just think it looks really neat. Got a few other things on here, like this little terracotta sort of it's not a trough, but it's a bit thinner, you know, and then a few other reclaimed terracotta little pots featuring annuals. So these are some of my favorites. I also really like these miniature greenhouses that you can get. You can find these in a lot of antique yards and places. They're good to style. I haven't really done much with mine yet, but I definitely recommend getting yourself one. You don't even have to really use them as a greenhouse. They just look good as something to display in your garden. So another thing that I would recommend trying to find if you want a cool little design trick. I'm also a big fan of just including pots in your flower beds. As you can see here, this is a antique terracotta pot, which has got some annuals in it. They still look okay. They don't look amazing, and they kind of are a bit overshadowed by everything else going on. But at the same time, it's just nice to include different things in your flower beds. Again, it doesn't have to be all about actual flowers and perennials and stuff. You can put other stuff in there, and by using a pot, you can still actually have more plants. So that's definitely one of my favorite things to do. I really like how it looks. I did have a few more in here, but I opted into putting more perennials, so I guess I didn't 100% listen to my advice. But let's be honest, the main star of the show is the urn planter anyways. A lot of people ask me about my garden paths, which I haven't really talked about that much. So these are just gravel paths, as you can see. A lot of people don't recommend gravel for pathways as they can kind of go everywhere and such. I've not had too much of a problem with that personally. I mean, you know, my garden is pretty much just used by me and my partner, so it's not a ton of people walking through it all the time. Maybe that helps. But yeah, I like using just the gravel. I've got a sort of golden gravel one. And the sort of design idea I've used, which is inspired by a lot of other gardens, is I've sort of done these winding paths. These pathways aren't straight or even whatsoever. They sort of intersect and wind around the garden, as you can see. So that's how I like it, and I think that's a really great way of making your garden more interesting. If you're looking for a way to design it and you want it to feel more fun and adventurous, this can be a really good way of doing so, because by the fact that they sort of wind and weave around the garden, it forces people to, you know, not just take the quickest path to wherever they're going, like the patio or the grass area over there. It sort of encourages them to stop and smell the flowers, if we want to use that term. So yeah, I really like it. As you can see, I've split my garden up into two different areas. I've got the sort of grassy traditional lawn over here, which, you know, fairly simple, fairly basic. Ignore the mess over there. I've been doing some plant moving. And then over here is the perennial garden with all the pathways and such. So yeah, that's definitely one of my favorite design ideas that I use in the garden, having these winding pathways. I think it's just so much fun, It's much more exciting to sort of wander around like this. Don't get me wrong, I do love gardens that have the sort of really perfect pathways, and you know, you've got the really immaculately planted flower beds as you go around. I think they look incredible too. This is just one of the ideas that I like using here in my garden. Another design idea that I want to mention is painting. So as you can see, I've painted pretty much everything back here up to my gate and the shed and such, and even the aviary in this sort of green color. Now, some people I know don't like painting their stuff. They want to leave it the sort of wood color, and that's fine. I do actually do that with my pergola and my greenhouse. They're just in the regular pine wood color, although I still recommend protecting them. But the reason why I painted this is because, generally speaking, I feel like they blend into the background a lot more. Now, they still do stand out, which I'm happy with, personally. I don't want to hide them completely because I think they add something to the garden, especially the shed. That was already here when we moved in, and I just like it. I think it's a nice looking shed. So yeah, basically what I'm trying to say is, if you want to disguise the buildings and fences of your garden, paint them a sort of darker color that'll blend into the back. A lot of people paint them black, which is a very good idea if you want to sort of hide them and focus on the plants. The plants will stand out a lot more. I personally didn't want to do that because it just doesn't suit my sort of garden whatsoever, which is more of a cottage style. So I decided to paint them in this green color, and I think it's worked really well. You know, maybe they're not as well blended into the background as, say, you know, they would be if they were painted black, but the fact that they are this sort of darker green color, you know, not like light green or anything, it really does sort of make them sort of not be the focal point, which is nice. I mean, if you look at this, what do you see first? Well, obviously you probably see the buildings because they're taking up most of the shot, but the flowers are really vibrant compared to the colors of the shed and the fence. So yeah, I would say that has worked pretty darn well for me. I'm certainly very happy with how that looks, and yeah, I would recommend doing it. I'm not going to include having an aviary as a garden idea because these guys will not be quiet during my recordings. They have decided that now they want to be as loud as possible during my video, despite being quiet all day. You know, these guys have been quiet all morning, and now that I'm recording, they want to be loud and fight and go crazy. And yeah, look at him swinging on that. I know this isn't gardening stuff, but can you see him swinging on that? That's so cute. I'm sorry, I know not all of you are interested in birds and aviary stuff. This is a gardening channel, but sometimes I do like to highlight the aviary because it is a big part of what makes this garden feel more alive, in my opinion. So, you know, I mean, I'd recommend getting an aviary. As long as you know what you're doing with birds, get an aviary. But at the same time, these guys can be annoying when it comes to recording videos. Sorry guys, but you know it's true. I don't know if this is a design idea as such. It's not really to do with design, but I do recommend getting yourself a wildlife pond. Here is mine, and I'm really pleased with how it is looking and how it's been doing. It's definitely been attracting a lot of nature to the garden, which is great. Birds will use it to drink from. Of course, frogs will use it, and you might even get frog spawn, dragonflies, you know, all kinds of cool stuff. It's just a really great addition, and they look cool. So if you're looking for like a design feature in your garden, then I feel like adding a wildlife pond is a really good idea and will definitely help your garden come together more. So these are all of my design ideas for now. I really hope you enjoyed this video and got some inspiration. Definitely share some of your favorite design ideas in the comment section. I'd love to hear what you've been doing. And if you made it to the end, definitely drop a like. I would appreciate that. It helps support the content. And also subscribe if you haven't already. We'd love to have you here.